To the class. Well, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Where is that setting? Where are you?
I'm in Bluffton, South Carolina, which is in between Hilton Head and Savannah.
Okay. Is it like actually spring there?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, it is. There's
it's,
like,
I hear
yeah, it's
birds.
really beautiful. Yeah, birds and Spanish moss everywhere, which is creepy at night, but during the day, it's fine.
Uh,
Um, Yeah, it's
it,
lovely. It's
it
really
is
lovely.
just lovely.
Yeah, my husband and I had our first Zoom meeting tussle. I feel like this is going to be a thing. So this is good. This is good
Okay.
practice. He's like, you cannot be in here. I'm like, you cannot be in here. So I got kicked outside and I'm like, I got the better seat.
I think you did.
Yeah.
And
So
when this is on YouTube, it'll be very lovely for people to see it.
I love it. I took a picture of my setup because it's hilarious. Like I'm on like a patio table with pillows under my computer. Like it's like one of those things like, here's how it looks on Instagram. Here's how
Right.
it really looks. And she doesn't have pants on, whatever. It's great.
This is real life. That's so funny. Well, we got connected because you were good friends with my husband in high school.
I was, yeah. We were frequent show choir partners in high school.
Yeah, back in the day. I
So,
love you because I asked you, did you guys date? Because I started to lose track of everything. You were like, no, but we really know each other's jazz hands.
yeah, like I sent a note to him after you and I talked, and I'm like, it was really weird telling your wife that I've probably danced more with you than anyone else.
Yeah, he's
So,
a very good dancer. Well, you warmed him up real well. You did
well,
good.
good. I'm glad. There you go. That's my
Yeah.
gift to you.
Well, I am so excited to talk about your new business and your new calling and gift.
Yes,
It's something that people aren't, maybe even aware of, but
that's true.
the title is a death doula, which in other countries is not that uncommon.
Correct.
So tell me more about what is a death doula? Like what does that mean?
So I am a death doula, and a lot of people are familiar with the word doula as far as supporting women when they give birth or supporting people when they give birth. And the word comes from being in service. So it means you are in service. Whatever that person needs, you are there to provide that service.
Mm,
So, a birth doula shows up when labor begins. And sometimes when the baby arrives, that birth doula leaves.
mm,
There are postpartum doulas who specifically minister to families when those first couple weeks when it's so hard with a new baby at home. So the way you can kind of look at a death doula is I do all of that on the other end of life.
mhm.
So instead of welcoming a new life into the world, I help throw the party that sends that person off from this world.
Wow. And I think that one of the things that we had touched on when we first spoke was about normalizing the conversations around death because
Right.
we really will benefit from those supports or your support services through that end of life journey. And then just how do we even talk about death and having those
Ugh.
conversations? It can be very unnerving.
It's such a good question. And it's a lot of what led me to this work, even though I didn't realize I was being led to this work. So
Mhm.
I think I told you the story that when I was very, very little, very young, I remember being at like a nursery school or a babysitting co-op, and one of my little fellow kids
Mhm.
came in and said he was crying, and the reason was he lost his grandma.
Mm.
And I was so confused because I had not had a death that I had experienced personally. I was very young. my brain was very literal, but this made such an impact on me that I still remember it. And I kept thinking, well, if you've lost your grandma, why are you here? Why aren't you looking for her?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what is happening? Like,
Right.
and just being like, and then looking around at adults in the room and thinking, why is no one upset about this?
Right. We should
Like,
be springing to action.
like, what are we doing? Like,
What is
circle
that?
time? No, where is grandma? And
Right.
I just, and you know, looking back, he didn't understand either. So that was probably my first, like, wondering, why can't we just say, my grandma died?
Right.
My grandma is dead.
Right.
So for me, I was that very curious kid about all things death and dying. And I didn't understand why we couldn't talk about it. I was shushed. I was told, you're freaking people out. I did freak people out. And I just remember thinking, but we're all going to do this. Like, can't we
Right.
talk about it? And then, you know, I raised 6 girls and we didn't talk a lot about this. And then I became an occupational therapist and I worked in a trauma center.
Oh,
And what I did without realizing it at the time was help people grieve small deaths of the life they knew, and sometimes very real deaths. I mean, sometimes my patients were the sole survivor in a car accident, which is a
wow.
whole different kind of grief. And dealing with traumatic death or traumatic change, which is what I dealt with in a trauma center,
Mhm.
is a whole different kind of thing because things surprise you.
Right.
And I just remember thinking, okay, but is this really a surprise? Like, we're all going to do this.
Right.
Eventually, some of us get a diagnosis and we get to process it over weeks and months and years. And some people get in a car accident.
Mhm.
And I really learned how to sit with grief in that trauma center, where some of the most ridiculous things get said to people. Like, you know,
Oh.
someone has, their life has dramatically changed and someone will say, you're so lucky to be alive.
Oh boy.
And that person does not feel lucky, not
Right.
at all. Some of them are wishing they didn't survive.
Right.
And to just be able to sit with that person and say, this sucks. This sucks. But the life you knew, we're going to honor that and we're going to say goodbye to that. And now we have a choice because you do have a life. How are we going to make it a life that you can live fully now?
Right.
And so, like, occupational therapy slogan is living life to the fullest, which is beautiful. It's
Mhm.
really, really lovely. But part of it is, you know, part of it should be sitting in the suck. Like,
Right.
we need to
Because that's where you
sit
start. If you
and just acknowledge, like, instead of like, oh, you're so lucky to be alive, God has a plan. All of those things that we say, thinking that we're being comforting and kind, and we leave people going, no, like, I don't feel lucky. I'm not speaking to God at the moment. I'm really angry.
Right.
And to be able to sit with those people in those moments was such an honor and such a privilege, because you just get to be present for things that happen in all of our lives. And then, you know, when I left my job at the trauma center, intending to go back relatively soon, then COVID hit.
Mm.
And death education just kept slamming me in the face, just like one thing after another. And COVID allowed a program that I was interested in to go virtual.
Oh.
And so I was able to be certified as an end of life coach, and their program calls it a sacred passage doula. I
Mm.
want to use the word death because words matter. I don't want people looking for a lost grandma. I want people to know that I work with death.
Right.
So that's kind of how this story found me in this place. the very
Right.
long, windy
No,
road that led
yeah,
here.
it's beautiful. And that really is kind of the evolution and growth into ourselves, right? It's that one experience leads to another experience, which
Right.
ultimately can lead us to just something that lights us up.
Well, and part of what went with this too, Michele, was that it was a lot of me just trying to find who I am in this world.
Right.
So, you know, I mentioned I have 6 daughters. I left the corporate world to be a stay-at-home mom, and it was not my jam. And there was a lot of guilt associated with financially, it made sense. Like I love the moments I had at home with those girls, but I was built for like interacting with adults and creating programming and speaking. And so, you know, telling my 2-year-old to do something and having her go, no, it was like, do you know who I am? Like, listen, she would just say no again. And I'm like, oh, you know, good training for what I'm eventually doing. But, you know, I had roadblocks just placed in front of me for all of these pursuits I was going to do. And it's like, it's the first time in my 49 and a half years on this planet where I know I was made for this.
Yeah.
This is what I was made to do. And normalizing conversations and being able to say the word dead, death, dying, those words matter. And mostly being able to tend to grief.
Yes.
And grief is this thing that our society does not know how to do death, but we especially don't know how to do grief. We haven't been taught. We don't know how to do it. So we all feel like we're doing it wrong.
Well, and it's so different for everybody, and the timelines and the emotions that are felt and the actions that we're taking and the thoughts that were like, it's just so different. So yeah, it's like people just ignore it or don't talk about it.
And I think it's what gets in the way of talking about death, because the moment that you start thinking about your own death, the death of your partner or spouse, the death of a child, which that one absolutely breaks me open, the death of a parent, what we start doing is we start right away with anticipatory grief. So with a traumatic death, you grieve one time. You get the news, that person has died, and you start grief's journey right there. With a diagnosis, with a conversation, with planning, you start grieving then. So you grieve all the way through it. And then when it actually happens, you think, I've already done this. Nope. No. It starts all over again. And so being able to have these conversations and being able to say to people, I think we have this wrong. I don't believe that grief is an emotion. I don't believe that. I think there's emotions involved with grief, but I don't think grief is the emotion. I also don't think grief is an illness, which prolonged grief is considered a medical illness. I don't buy that. I don't believe it. I think grief is a place. I think it's a place where you live, and you can live joyful, full, amazing lives, but you have to acknowledge where you are.
Right.
And if we can do that, you know, I get a lot of people that look at me and they're like, well, why are you smiling? We're talking about death. I'm like, I know.
It's my favorite subject.
It's so exciting. And I feel that way about grief too. We as humans have the capacity to hold joy in grief. We can do both. We have that capacity. We can be really, really, really upset about the war in Ukraine, and we can celebrate a preschooler's graduation at the same time.
Right.
We can do both. We don't have to stop all of our celebrating because something bad is happening somewhere in the world, even if it's in our own world.
Right.
Like grandma would not have wanted you to miss your baby's preschool graduation.
Right.
So you can grieve and celebrate. And I can show you how.
Well, and what you offer and how you walk with families is is pretty extensive. Like there's just a lot of aspects to this.
Yeah,
So
that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah. When someone first calls you, like what does that first conversation look like? And like, what are you telling them you can help them with or do with them?
So right now, my business is just this tiny little baby. And so I just got started.
Yeah.
I've been helping clients through bartering and on a volunteer basis for quite a long time. But now that I have an LLC and I can officially pay taxes, I have an EIN,
Yes.
I'm stepping into the next. And the first question people will get is, right now clients are handed to me like almost in like this sacred way of someone I've worked with will say, you need to talk to Jenni. Here's her number. And they almost pass them to me. It almost feels like a physical exchange.
Yeah.
And so that person will call and usually it's so-and-so said, I needed to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And I usually just say, what's going on?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a friend, a loved one has a terminal diagnosis and I can absolutely help. I can absolutely talk about fears, anticipatory grief. I can walk you through all of the stages of planning for that death. My occupational therapy hat comes on to make sure people are safe in their homes. We do a lot of questions about where do you want to die? And I'm so surprised at how that question, people physically react to that question.
Wow.
Because I don't think people understand that they have a choice. Now, we don't always have a choice.
Right.
But a lot of times we do have a choice. So to be able to say, if I could script it, I want to die in my big fluffy king bed surrounded by my pets and my family. And don't forget my favorite pillow and my blanket.
Right.
And make sure Janis Joplin is jamming on Alexa. And don't you dare let this certain person anywhere near me. Like, okay, now we're rolling.
Right.
But the question I get a lot, especially from clients that I'm working with who are already like down the path of death, is I should have hired you sooner. And yes, that's the answer. When should you hire me? Right now.
Right.
You can be in your 20s. You can be in your 50s, you can be in your 90s. If we can walk through the planning of death and all that encompasses, like who's going to manage your Facebook page?
Right.
Who has the passwords to your bank accounts? Who is going to get rid of that secret little box that you have in your closet?
God. I call it the burn box.
The burn box.
And I have my people on deck.
Yes. And you better have multiple people on deck. Like, okay, you get in there, you talk to no one, you make no eye contact, you grab the burn box and you run and you go. These are important things. These are important things. And so to be able to walk people through that in a conversation, in a relationship, then when death comes or becomes more imminent, we're ready. We're already ready. Right. And the coolest thing is how people change the way they're living. So a lot of people will say things to me like, well, if I knew I was going to die, I would finally book that month-long trip to Bali. And then I usually just stay very quiet and just let them sort through that. Like just kind of let it sit.
Yeah.
Because very quickly you go, so when you receive a terminal diagnosis, then you're going to go to Bali?
Right. When, by the way, you maybe are not going to be feeling very well. And
right. Like, so you're going to pay for your nursing team to go to Bali? That is really generous.
Wow. Yes.
Wow. Does your doula get to come? Sweet.
I want to go to Bali.
Right. I'm portable. I'll come.
Yeah.
But so it's that realization of why are we waiting to live? Why are you waiting for someone to tell you your death is imminent? I'm going to tell you your death is imminent. It is. Right. It is. It is the only thing. I can walk into a room full of people, and I love doing this when I speak. I'll walk into a room full of people and I'm like, I know something all of us are going to do. All of us. And people will guess. They're like, yeah, we're going to take a coffee break in 15 minutes.
Right.
I'm like, well, not all of us. Some of us are going to go Facebook. Some,
Right.
some of us don't do coffee. But if there is something we are all going to do, why aren't we talking about it? Why? My brain cannot understand it. Well, it's scary. Okay. There's a lot of things in this life that are scary. Well, we don't know what happens afterwards. Right?
Right.
Also true. But I think there's a lot of things we do in life where that's true also. So to just kind of pull the curtain down on all of this and say, this is something we are all going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it well. Let's start telling our children, you have a right to a good death. The death you want.
Right.
On your terms. Like, make a playlist.
Right.
Make a list of scents and colors that you want to surround you. Make a list of people that you want to see. Make a list of people that you need to talk to before this happens. Make amends if you need to. Let them go if you need to. Whatever you need to do, I can help. And sometimes my help is to just sit with you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just to sit in silence with you as you go, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things. Death doesn't have to be scary. I'm not going to say it's not hard, because as humans, when we love people and love them well and love them hard, the thought of being without them, it sucks. It is so hard. But the thought of keeping someone here a moment longer than they need to be should be harder for us. It should be harder. Like, if we can step out of our personal selfishness.
Yes.
Letting someone who is ready to die beautifully is the greatest gift I think we can give anyone.
What's coming up for me are two things. One, just thinking about how many kids struggle with this conversation, and then really letting their parents go. So they continue to do medical interventions that are actually cause suffering ultimately in the long run.
They can be cruel.
They're painful, and perhaps we're extending time, but certainly not quality. So that's coming up for me. And then the second thing is that when it was evident that we were on a very steep decline with my father-in-law, it was like Monday, I started realizing what was happening in my mind, because I've been around death enough to know kind of our trajectory. But then by Tuesday, I was like, we need that lady here. that friend of yours that you mentioned was a death doula. Like, there was so much uncertainty about what we were facing and how things were going to go. And, there are some predictability things with literally how the body shuts down, but then there's just some uncertainty. And I just thought it would have been really nice to have you there to support us and kind of as our guide.
And
so I guess,
it's, and the image that you just painted is so perfect, because it's not that I know more. It's not that I know what to do. It's not that, like, I have all the answers, and so you're going to look to me and I'm going to bestow these answers on you. Right. It's that I'm just present. Right. I'm just there. Like, you already know all the things, like to be able to say, Michele, he's ready. Right. So sit with the spot in you that's not ready. Like, let's just sit there.
Right. I was still trying to problem solve, right?
Absolutely. And that makes so much sense. And this is the role caregivers go into. And this is also the role doctors go into.
Mhm.
We have taught caregivers and doctors that death means they failed.
Right.
So we have rigged the game.
Right.
We have, from the very beginning, we have set our caregivers and our medical team up to fail, because we're saying you have to prevent the inevitable, magic doctor, super
Right.
caregiver.
Yes.
Like, how about we bring this back to reality? How about we live in this real physical world that we live in as humans? And how about we honor that everything on this planet has a lifespan? Everything.
Everything. We're all
Everything.
Energy. Like
everything has a lifespan. That big mighty oak behind me has a
right.
lifespan, and she will die.
Yes.
And that is how it works. I almost feel like our human existence is a little cruel, because a lot of the life on this planet lives on this planet without a lot of knowing.
Mm.
We have a lot of knowing. And because we have a lot of knowing, our mind gets in the way of what we know if we get quiet.
Right.
Like, we all know that we have watched our loved ones suffer with disease and illness and pain. And we know we don't want that to continue. But we do. But
right.
we do. Because the pain I'm going to have to feel when she goes is going to be too much for me.
Yes. Yes.
So many people have told me,
gosh.
but it will kill me when she goes. Okay. It is going to end part of the life that you know. That's true, but you're not going to drop dead.
Right.
Is it going to hurt? Yes. Are you going to suffer? Yes. Are you going to have spontaneous memories of her where you can smell her kitchen and hear her laugh? Yes. Is she going to visit you in a dream? Probably. And you know what? We have to be able to keep moving in the skin that we're in and honor that it was time for someone else to go.
Right.
We can do it at a dinner party. Like, please don't go, please don't go, please don't go. I'm gonna miss you so much. Can you at least do the dishes?
Yeah.
But death is the only thing that we've forgotten how to celebrate. We celebrate every other ending. We celebrate graduations. We celebrate, we could do graduations differently. We could be like,
right. Sometimes there is a little of that in there, but most celebration.
Like you could sit and bawl through a wedding. I've seen mothers do it. Like,
yeah.
But ultimately, there's this joy of what's next. This joy of, here we go.
Yes.
And I find it so interesting that my clients that are the most religious are the most afraid.
Isn't that fascinating?
It's fascinating. And it's because there's this little bit, so the people who are most religious aren't always the people that are the most faith-filled. People who are faith-filled, meaning you don't have to show me anything. I know. I have faith.
Right.
Those people can do this. They can do this because they're
right.
like, I don't have to know. I don't have to know. But it's the people that are still holding on to that, like, but what if it's wrong? What if everything I've been taught isn't really true?
Right.
And so you look at grandma who's ready to go. She's like, Jesus is waiting. I'm ready. Let me at him. I'm ready. And then the family is like, oh, but what if he's not? What if he's not? And
right.
we have we have physical reactions. And then we wonder why people dying struggle to hold on. Or when you finally whisper to that person, you can go.
Yes.
They go. They need permission to go. And what a beautiful gift to give someone to say, I will always love you.
Right.
Always. You can go.
which is like one of the most selfless things. I think ultimately, I mean, and speaking to what you're saying, it's like we are trying to avoid one really challenging, hard, awful in air quotes feeling of the loss, but we're buffering with these other feelings that also actually feel pretty crummy.
Yeah. Choose your heart.
Right.
You have to choose your heart. You posted something recently that said, people will die for their children.
Oh, yeah.
But will they live for them? And the answer is no.
Right.
The answer is no. Like every mother I know would say, I will stand in front of a full-blown army to protect my child.
Right.
But it's like, will you live? And I almost named some vices. I don't want to pick on any vices, but will you step into and live your best life for your child? Will you do
Right.
that? And
Well,
that's
I mean,
what this is all about.
Yeah.
Shifting that message of, well, that's great that you would die for them, but how about you live for them first until the dying opportunity comes up?
Yeah.
Then you can do that. That's great.
And you do that once, you die once.
Yeah.
We're living every day.
Yeah. And that die once, so let's make it be the best.
As far as we know, I'll put that in parentheses.
Yes. Yeah. Tuck your spiritual part back in for a minute.
Right.
There.
As far as we know, I don't know.
Yeah.
When we were talking about planning, and I just think this was so important, and something that I felt a little bit of a void with Todd's dad was we didn't really talk about what he wanted that period, those days or hours to look like. And I was in such a caregiver problem solver mode, trying to fix something. And then we had hospice on deck. But they're intermittent. And then we had a beautiful care staff at the place he was living, and they were very amazing and helpful. But I don't know, it was like one of the aides came in, and I still couldn't exactly see where we were at with things. I didn't realize that he was actually dying until a couple hours later. I was like, oh, now I like the veil had been lifted, but he made, tidied up the room and got him really comfortable. And then he turned on the TV and put on music, meditation type music. And it was so interesting because that's when I was like, oh, now I know what's happening.
Someone gave me a cue.
Someone gave me the cue. But then the other piece was, he would have never listened to this in real life, IRL, right? He would have never turned on this kind of music.
Right.
I mean, it was very calming for me. And he was definitely he was snoring, resting, and so I thought, well, we'll just leave it on. But it would have been nice, like you were saying, what scent would be like a cinnamon roll,
right.
You love.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that is so the end of when someone enters stages of actively dying, that's a whole different realm. It's such a sacred space, and it is such an honor to be present, but it can also be really scary. Breathing hitches, and breaths can last a really long time, and everyone holds their breath in between breaths. Everyone does that. And to be able to be in the room to continue to breathe so that everyone else continues to breathe, just that can change how a room feels.
Yes.
But there's been so many times where people have shared stories with me where they're like, well, I walked into this room and I wasn't even sure I was in the right room. I'm like, what is this music? What are these? I don't even, am I in the right room? Because that is where's the Metallica that should be playing right now? And, where's the Harley Davidson blanket that is his favorite blanket? This lace stuff, he wouldn't want this. And, he wouldn't want this. Well, how do we know? We don't innately just know. I don't walk into a room and go, Metallica playlist, Harley Davidson blanket, bring those on over. I have to be told.
Right.
And people have to have permission to tell their story. So there's a lot of people who are living, especially the generation of my parents and grandparents, and especially those women they were taught that their choices didn't matter. That has been well ingrained in them for a really long time.
Yes.
So to tell someone, where do you want to die? And have them go, well, whatever's convenient for everyone else.
Right.
No, what do you want? What do you want? I worked with a woman recently who said, I have drank coffee the way my husband likes it for 50 years.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
And I
gosh.
said, but what do you want?
Right.
She's like, I just want a cup of black coffee. I said, then let's have a cup of black coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you having a cup of black coffee is not inconveniencing me. I
Right.
would like to make coffee the way you like it. And I still am shocked at, she thanked me so many times. And I'm like, you get to have what you want.
Right.
You get to have what you need. But first, they have to realize that they do have wants and needs. They're buried so
Right.
deeply. Like, I have had people say to me, I really want to die at home, but that would freak my husband out. Okay, would it really?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that a fear that you're projecting on him and you don't know?
Right. It's really just holding space for some uncomfortable conversations.
It's holding space for just all of it to
All of
come
it.
out. Like,
Yeah.
all of it. It can be uncomfortable. It can be lovely. It can be scary. It can be funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, some of the things that people are concerned about as they're dying, like, you know, like, again, children come in and they're like, I am happy to bathe you. And then the mother is like, do not let them.
I don't want them to see me naked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, if you're, okay, there are families that caregivers step up and do those beautiful things for people. As an occupational therapist, I have seen so many people naked.
Yeah.
Like, so many. And everybody does the like, oh, I'm like,
Yeah.
2 parts. And I always break the ice kind of, you know, giggly. I'm like, do you have parts I've never seen? Woo! This is going to be amazing. And
Show me that third nipple.
I know. I'm like, woo! Ooh, I can't wait to see it. Or, you know, and it just breaks the ice of, okay, under it all, we're all human, but that doesn't mean that you get to assume that your dying person wants you to do that role.
Right.
That might take something sacred away from them. That, you know, maybe your grandmother has a really racy tattoo and she would like to keep that to herself.
Right.
She has the right to do that.
Right. Dignity. And
she has the right to do that. So we talk a lot. Here's the disconnect. We talk about the dignity of death, but we don't do any of the things to make sure that we can actually offer it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what a person wants, all you're doing is giving me lip service.
Right.
Oh, we're going to have the dignity of her death as we hook her up to yet another treatment, as we poke her with yet another painful procedure, as we refuse to discharge her home because it's too dangerous. Oh, too dangerous. What's going to happen? Is she going to die?
Right.
I mean, like,
yeah.
We have to be able to do all of these things. And for me, there's just so much more to it. Like, if we can start when our babies are babies and say the word dead, dying. Kids do this. Kids do this really, really well.
Yeah, like the hamster's dead.
And they're just
we're like, whoa.
Yeah, moms freak out. Oh,
right.
It's passed on to another place. No, it didn't, Mom. She just, like, her feet are up in the air. She's just dead.
She's hard. She's dead.
She's dead. Like, let them touch it. Let them, like, stop whisking death away. Stop replacing pets while your kids are sleeping. Like,
oh my gosh.
Death of a pet, death of a tangential connection, those are our training wheels. But we don't give kids, we like protect them from that, but that's what they need to be learning most. We need to model to them, I am sad, but I'm not dropping dead.
Right.
I miss that person, but I also honor that their time here is over. Like, we can't even, you know, be the model because we don't know how to do it.
Right.
We don't know how to do it. Or, saying the word dead, it's like saying genital words. I mean, like, I swear,
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
I walk into rooms and I'm like, okay, we're going to say dead, 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 penis, penis, penis. Like,
Right.
we're just going to say all the words.
All the things that make us
We're
go,
like,
yeah.
okay, just all the words. We're just going to have a blurt session. Everybody blurt everything out that you need to say, or like how we talk about like the D word, death, or the
Right.
C word, cancer. Like, say the words. The words
Right.
matter. And it especially matters to all of those young people listening who don't understand what it means that your time is coming. Well, what,
Right.
lunchtime?
It's like ominous.
Playtime? Nap
Scary.
time? Which time? Which time is coming?
Right. And what the visual that's coming to my head right now is about the same time as Todd's dad died.
There you go. There you go.
One of my previous colleagues, his mom had died, and he is from I think maybe the Congo. And so he had video of the ceremony that they were having for his mom. And it was like the pallbearers, but they were lifting up the casket and there were drummers and everything was just so colorful and joyful. And obviously there's grief and some sadness and all of those things, but it just was so beautiful and big and loud. I don't know. And it just, I felt like we were whispering and
and you just reminded me of the best funeral I've ever been to. And I know people will be like, she just said the best funeral she's ever been to. Like, she has a top 10 list. I do, by the way. The best funeral I've ever been to. And it was a Catholic funeral, and it shocked me so much. The priest started the service with a standing ovation.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, yes, like, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Everyone stood up and cheered. And that is how we should look at a life well lived, or a life not so well lived. You know what? Way to go. Like, woo. Way to go.
You made it to this time.
Right? Good for you. Good for you. We talk so much about how hard life is. So let's celebrate it when it's over, especially those that are so well lived. I just, or have you ever been to a funeral and the eulogy starts and you're like, I am.
Yeah. Yes.
Is he talking about Bob?
Right. Right. Oh, it's like, it's so cringy.
Why do we reframe everyone to be saints the moment they die? Because if someone does that at my service, I'm coming back in there. Like, like stop. Like, do not rose-colored glasses me. I have lots of amazing qualities, but I also have some stuff that, like, don't gloss over it. Like, it's okay to say Bob was a grumpy old man.
He was a curmudgeon. Yes.
He was.
Because that is what people are going to identify with.
He was also so generous, but he would never give you something with a smile. It always came with a lesson. Right. But he was so generous and he loved so hard, but you would hardly ever know it, because first you had to get through the moaning and the groaning and the complaining. Yes. Like, tell it like it is, please. Like, can we just be honest at some point about who people were? Yeah. And then one of the things that comes up for me when someone's actively dying is that their death, even if I've worked with someone, even if I've helped someone through it, the moment that death comes, there's the most beautiful silence that happens in the room, in the place, but someone has to fill it. Someone death isn't an emergency is what I want people to understand. When you have the space to accompany someone at that moment, so they were alive and now they are dead.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that, there's no, you don't have to call 911. And actually, if you do, that's going to complicate things. Like, you can sit with them as long as you want. If you want to sit with that person all night, I am going to help you sit with that person all night. If you want to crawl into bed with that person and hold them, I am going to help you. Mm-hmm. If you are afraid to touch them and you want to stand in the corner and watch, okay. Mm-hmm. If you want to sing, if you want to scream, if you want whatever you need to do, I'm going to help you do that.
Support them. I'm
going to hold space for you while you do that. But this thing of like, we have to get this body out of here. We have to, like, isn't there someone we need to call? Are we going to be in trouble if we don't call in a certain amount of time? Like, stop.
Right.
No one is going to punish you for sitting with your dead. And I want to remind people that your grandparents did this. Mm-hmm. I live in a house that was built in 1906, and I've done a lot of research on my house. And when you start looking at the houses up and down my street, who are all similar in age, what you find with the address is the obituaries, because people were laid out in their homes. So 1906 is what, 116 years ago?
Right.
116 years ago, funeral homes weren't the norm. 116 years ago, if someone died, the family would bathe them and they would dress them. And oftentimes the dining room table became where that person would be laid out, so that neighbors and family could come and pay their respects. There was no, oh my goodness, get that dead thing out of here. There was no, oh, I can't touch her. There was none of that. There was this, whether it was sacred or ritual or religious, it didn't matter. That was what had to be done to honor our dead. And so there was no one else to do it. So I think where we became disconnected from death and the ritual of death and the ritual of after death was when we started outsourcing it.
Right.
Like we decided that funeral homes could do this for us. And then we decided, well, we better honor our family by having the prettiest, most expensive, most luxurious casket, flowers, and all the things. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what? I'm sure I'm going to make some funeral directors mad, but spend that money on a party ahead of time. Like, go celebrate your dying with everyone around them and spend the money on that. Have a big party while you're still here.
Right. Well, it goes back to the sense of community and isolation, and that back in the day, we were in community with one another. We had those support systems, and now we're so isolated. And I mean, I think this kind of brings us to our home stretch of that is the beauty of having a death doula walk with you on this journey to, resurrect, so to speak, some tradition or culture or desires, and just help you navigate it and think through it and create an experience that you want and deserve.
Right. And I think being in a pandemic society, which still feels so weird to say that I've lived through a pandemic thus far, the pandemic created such a density of death that you can't help but step in it.
Right.
So we live in a society where people largely can avoid things that they find unpleasant. It's almost like walking around a pile of dog doo on the sidewalk. Like, we have a society where we are taught to avoid the unpleasant, and we're given permission to avoid the unpleasant. And then we're also told things like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and no pain, no gain. Like,
and have another drink and don't worry about it. And
right. And, oh, this will be better tomorrow. Well, I can't tell you that grief will feel better tomorrow. And I won't. I will not tell you that.
Right.
Because I want you to trust me. I want to present my whole self to you. And that is not a promise I can make. We live in a society where there has been so much research on the stages of grief, like these are the stages of grief. Okay, well, we also have stages of child development. And once you have mastered the stages of child development, you are an adult.
Right.
Well, what the heck are you once you've gone through the stages of grief?
Yeah, what are you?
Because for me, I'm still grieving, but I went through all the stages. Oh, well, yesterday I was at this stage. And I woke up this morning all the way back here, like chutes and ladders, like, woo, boom, right back at the start. So clearly I'm doing grief wrong. Like, and then you get people that are like, I don't even know how to grieve correctly. Like, can we all just take a collective breath? Like, I wish I could rewrite all of those books. And I wish I could take those stages of grief that are laid out so beautifully and linearly. And I want to flip them this way.
Right.
And then I want to put them on a spring like this. And I want to be like, welcome to the trampoline of grief. Here we go.
Right.
Okay. So this moment you can do a triple twisting backflip and you're really good. This moment you just got double bounced and you are on your face.
Right.
Like
laying flat, laid out.
Like flat on your face with a big old trampoline smash mark on your cheek. And your pride hurts a whole lot. Like, both of those things are okay. The wind is going to get knocked out of you and you are going to sing and soar, both, sometimes simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay. Like, there is no right way to do this, which is why grief being an emotion, well, first of all, our society doesn't do emotions either. So
That's a whole nother
whatever. That's a whole nother conversation. We'll do another podcast on that. And then saying that grief is an illness means you can cure it. And I'm telling you, you can't. You can't. So if we can look at grief as a place where we live, we just moved. We picked up ourselves and we moved. And we moved into a place where someone else isn't anymore. It doesn't mean we have to stop living. It doesn't mean we stop honoring everyone else living around us. It doesn't mean we give up our dreams. Maybe we dream bigger because we just realized, oh, I don't have endless amounts of time. I have this body and this health and this place right now. So I'm going to go to Bali next month for the whole month while my legs and my mind and my spirit can enjoy the trip. And then I'm going to pay it off for the next 20 years and it'll be fun. Right. Like to be able, so, this like death doula thing. Yes. Like the most sacred moment that I tend to is the moment where someone dies, but the work has to start so much sooner. Like the work really should start now. And my hope, is eventually that I can be in preschool rooms talking about death, or in corporations talking about death, where, the reality is if a corporation isn't supporting employees in grief, they are killing their bottom line. Right. And in a COVID society where we have experienced death in numbers that our lifetimes have never seen, it has touched all of us. All of us know someone who died from COVID. Yeah. And so I think that's why like NPR is doing stories on death doulas, because it's the time to say, oh, look, lots and lots of people are dying. Well, oh, look, that was happening before COVID too. Right. So let's hope that this is one of the good things that comes out of this, is that we start getting more comfortable with that death is hard, but it doesn't have to be scary. Ooh, that gives me chills. Death is hard, but doesn't have to be scary. Yeah. Well, I think the work you're doing is incredible. And I think you are amazing. Thank
And
you.
I'm glad that you and my husband were dance partners, and now he introduced us, and I'm just excited to see where things go.
Yeah, now we can get rid of him and just continue on, just you and I.
Soul
I know,
sisters.
and I have to tell you, it's so funny because I didn't realize Todd was reading my posts. So I'm like,
Yeah, he's out there tracking.
You never know who's listening, right?
Very good point.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
that's another thing, like say the hard things. Even if you think you're just speaking them into the ether, like say the hard things, you just never know who it's going to land with. And I'm so glad we got connected. And
me too.
I see us doing a lot together. So this is really fun.
100% agree. And the hard things are what connect us as humans, and it's and death is definitely part of that. So yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think this is going to help a lot of people.
I think so too. Can I give my business a little plug? Is that okay?
Yeah. I will definitely put all of that in the show notes, but how do people reach out to you and find you?
Well, right now, it's like I said, it's a passing from client to client, voice to voice, person to person, but the business is called Flourish Collaborative. Flourish meaning we can flourish always, and collaborative knowing that I cannot do this work alone. So meeting people like you and being able to build my team of people who are able to say the D word is great. And right now, social media is a great place to find me, but you're welcome to post my cell number and all of that good stuff for people to find me in the notes.
And you have like a Facebook group?
I have just a Facebook page for Flourish Collaborative. I also post openly on just my personal page quite a bit. And then I am terrible at Instagram, but I am out there. I'm also on LinkedIn. So slowly I broke up with social media. So getting back out to social media feels really uncomfortable, but I can do it.
Like a baby steer.
There will be more and more out there eventually, but I just wanted to build things more purposefully at the beginning. So
beautiful. Well, I'll have all that information in the show notes as well, so people can just click and find you very easily.
Love it. Here I am.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.